Armenian leaders face crunch talks after protests. The organizer of anti-government protests in Armenia says he will hold talks with Prime Minister Serzh Sargsyan early on Sunday. Nikol Pashinyan has been leading calls for Mr Sargsyan to resign over a constitutional change that opponents say is an attempt to retain power. The change transferred significant power to the Prime Minister, a role Mr Sargsyan only took on last week. He stepped down as president after reaching his two-term limit. Mr Pashinyan says he is only prepared to discuss the details of the Prime Minister's resignation and the logistics of transferring power. On Saturday, he told thousands of protesters gathered on Republic Square in the capital Yerevan that Mr Sargsyan didn't understand the new reality in Armenia. But Mr Sargsyan has called for dialogue to avoid what he termed irreversible consequences. Riot police have been facing off with crowds of demonstrators for days and scuffles have broken out, with a number of arrests. Many Armenians want to see genuine change in their country, but they feel that they are being deprived of that opportunity because the leadership remains the same, the BBC's Rehan Dimitri reports. What happened on Saturday? Mr Pashinyan's announcement that he will hold talks with the Prime Minister followed a dramatic intervention from the country's new president. Armenian Sargsyan, who is not related to Serzh Sargsyan, walked through crowds of protesters to shake hands with Mr Pashinyan and reportedly to propose formal talks. They talked for about 10 minutes, reporters say, with Mr Sargsyan suggesting they move to a hotel to hold proper negotiations. Mr Pashinyan declined the offer of immediate talks but asked for a guarantee that force would not be used against the demonstrators. Escorted by his bodyguards, the president then walked back to his car and left as the crowd chanted "Take a step, overthrow Serzh." Why is there such anger at Serzh Sargsyan? Mr Pashinyan recently described the action he leads as a velvet revolution, referring to the peaceful protests in 1989 that ended communist rule in Czechoslovakia, which later split into two states, the Czech Republic and Slovakia. The veteran opposition activist, who was jailed over his part in violent protests against Mr Sargsyan in 2008, called on supporters to paralyze the entire state system because power should pass to the people. While president, Serzh Sargsyan said he had no intention of becoming prime minister at the end of his second five-year term. However, on Tuesday he was chosen by parliament to serve as prime minister. In 2008, when Mr Sargsyan was first elected president, demonstrations erupted, with protesters alleging vote rigging. At least 8 people died in clashes with the authorities. His supporters argue that the tough veteran of the Nagorno-Karabakh war with Azerbaijan in the late 1980s has provided the national security Armenia needs, but he has been accused of failing to address continuing tensions with Azerbaijan and Turkey. Closer to home, critics have identified his rule with widespread poverty and over-dependence on Russia.